Our next speaker is Molly Rigual. Molly is a professional service engineer at Jamf. Her expertise ranges from leading technical training courses through the delivering professional service engagements. She has a passion for helping others learn technology that will make their jobs easier. Oh boy, could I ever use your help some days. While she's not teaching or training, you may find her running on the local trails and replenishing with a local craft beer. More importantly, Molly's favorite Apple product is the Apple Watch, a device she can't live without and won't get out of bed without, since without it, her steps will not be tracked. Molly's talk is entitled Fast 5, the Do's and Don'ts of Device Deployment.
Thank you for the introduction. All right, let's get my screen. It says it's disabled participant screen sharing.
Oops. Okay, just give us a second here.
Beautiful, thank you so much. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fast 5, the do's and don'ts of device deployment. As you heard from that awesome introduction, I'm Molly. I am a professional services engineer at Jamf. So just a little bit about me is I've been at Jamf for over 5 years, which is where most of my Apple and Jamf knowledge comes from. Prior to then, I knew Apple was my destiny ever since I laid eyes on my first MacBook Pro, which that device carried me all the way through college. And at that point, I was determined never to work on a PC again. So that's where it brought me to work at Jamf, where I do a lot of different customer engagements, including onboarding, pro services engagements, and I teach some of the certification courses there. And then outside of work, I do like going for runs, but I also really enjoy spending a lot of time with my husky, Kevin. We spend a lot of time outdoors together and going on adventures, except he's a little mad at me at the moment because I wouldn't let him in the office to join today. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about why you are here today. In this session, we'll be going through the 5 things you should and should not be doing in regards to device deployment. And after this session, you will have all the knowledge you need to knock your next deployment out of the park. So we'll start with the 5 things that you should be doing. The first thing we should be doing is enrolling into Apple School or Apple Business Manager. And some of you may be asking, what is this Apple School or Business Manager? Well, let me tell you. So Apple School Manager is a web-based portal for IT administrators that provides you a fast and streamlined way to deploy Apple devices in your organization. There are 2 main pieces in this portal. The first one is automated device enrollment. And this is what allows you to automatically enroll devices you have purchased from Apple or an authorized reseller into an MDM by simply just walking through the setup assistant. It's as easy as that. The second piece is volume purchasing, which allows you to purchase free or paid apps from the App Store and deploy them to your end users without requiring any Apple ID. That means no credentials from the end users is needed, which results in less user interaction and overall happier end users. So to recap with Apple Business and Apple School Manager, if you have that in place, from the time we purchase devices to the time the devices are in the hands of our end users, simply by walking through the setup assistant, devices will be managed and have the software they need. There is no step 3. It can be as easy as that. Our second do is generate a software list. By figuring out what software the users need ahead of time, we'll empower the end users by giving them the technology they need to successfully perform their job. While you are generating your software list, there are some additional things that you will want to consider aside just from the what software do my end users need. The first one being, have you ever installed a piece of software and received a prompt that looks like this. And then with that prompt, it has you go into your system preferences, open security and privacy, and then you have to allow that extension. Well, those are system extensions, and they require the users to allow them in order for the software to run. So one thing as admins that we do not want is, one, the chance our users do not allow these extensions to run, because if they don't, then our software will not work, which is a huge bummer. And then number two, we do not want additional prompts for our end users. We want to make things as simple as possible to be able to deploy software to them, give them what they need without requiring any interaction from them. So a solution we can put in place is to create a configuration profile that will automatically approve those extensions. So that way our software can be installed, the extensions can be approved, and no additional interaction from the end user is needed for the software to work. Similarly, but slightly different, you may have seen a prompt like this when installing a piece of software. Those are related to Apple's expanded security framework, the transparency, consent, and control, where users must grant the app the access it needs in order for it to function properly. So in the same fashion of extensions, if users do not approve the prompts, the software may not work as desired. So what we can do is make life easier for our end users and deploy a privacy preferences policy control profile to automatically allow or deny apps the access they need. One super great tool for building these profiles is the PPPC utility. With the PPPC utility, it allows you to easily build these PPPC profiles. And it's as simple as dragging the app into the tool, choosing the app or service the app needs access to, and then building profile to be able to deploy that to the end users. It's super simple, and that way we can deploy the app without having the app prompt the user for interaction. And if you're like, whoa, Molly, where do I find this awesome tool? That link down below, that jamf.it PPPC utility, will get you to that GitHub page where you can download the app. And even better, it's a free app. And then the last thing to consider with our software is the hardware we are deploying our software to, which will bring me to the next slide. Number 3 thing we should be doing is considering what type of hardware our end users are receiving. Are they using Macs with the traditional Intel processors, or do we have Apple's new M1 chip? As you may or may not know, Apple introduced computers with their own processor, which has been a huge breakthrough for the Mac. However, with these new processors comes new obstacles that we need to get through. One particularly big one is thinking back to the software we are deploying to our devices. Software, as it's been built for years on the Mac, has been built with the Intel processor in mind. But now software companies need to take into consideration of both the Intel processor and the M1 chip when it comes to creating their software. So depending on the software you are running, the developer may not yet have created their software to work with the M1 chip. So that piece of software is only usable on a Mac with an Intel processor. However, there is a solution where you can still run that piece of software on an M1 Mac, and that solution is Rosetta. So you can install Rosetta on your Macs, your M1 Macs, to make sure that any piece of software that was built with the Intel processor in mind can successfully run on your M1 Macs. If you are trying to install a piece of software that was just built for the Intel processor and Rosetta is not yet installed, your end users may receive a prompt like this to ask them to install Rosetta. However, as admins, We want to minimize the prompts our users are receiving because it is all about the end user experience. So at the bottom of the slide is a command that we can run on our end users' computers to install Rosetta. So we can put that in a script or run it as a remote command to make sure that Rosetta gets installed, our apps work, and to minimize the prompts our end users are receiving. Our number 4 do is have a deployment strategy. It's really important to have a game plan of how the devices are getting into the hands of the end users. So things to consider is, are you going to do a hands-on or a hands-off approach? Are you touching and setting up the devices before giving them out to the end users? If so, we need to come up with a plan of how we are setting up the devices, how many devices we are setting up, how long it takes to set up the devices, so we can create an appropriate timeline to make sure that we can get the devices into the hands of the end users when they need them. Alternatively, are you looking to give the devices to your users still in the box? If so, we need to make sure we have a workflow built out to get the devices managed, configured, and ready to go. So all they have to do is open the box. No step 3, just power on and walk through that setup assistant. So no matter which route you are taking, just be sure to have a plan to make sure that we have the smoothest rollout. And then our 5th do is having our security requirements. Security is something that should be on everyone's mind. We want to make sure to secure those devices the minute they are in the hands of your end users to protect any personal or confidential data. Some ways to secure your devices include, but are not limited to, encrypting your devices with FileVault, sending passcode requirements to make sure that users' devices are protected with a strong password. Make sure to set screensaver and password settings. So when users walk away from their device, one, if they don't remember to lock it, that it can go to create a screensaver, and then make sure to require a password when you unlock the device so that unwanted users cannot take advantage of the device when the users are aware. Security will be key. So that will wrap up the 5 things we absolutely should be doing when it comes to device deployment. Oh wait, there's one more thing. No way, bonus slide. So we have one more do. So I named it 5.2, redeployment. Maybe these are not brand new devices and you're working on redeploying your devices. It's really important to come up with strategies to redeploy your existing devices. So on the iOS side, it's super easy. You select a button to erase all contents and settings, and then that will erase the device and bring it back to the setup assistant. However, on the macOS side, there is no easy button to erase and then install the operating system like there is on the iOS side. Or is there? Since imaging is no more, we need to have a workflow that will cleanly wipe those devices, reinstall the OS, and get them enrolled, managed with all their software on them. One super great workflow we can do to achieve this goal is to use the Start OS Install command line tool that can be found directly inside the macOS installer. This workflow will involve having the macOS installer on the computer or computers we want to redeploy. And then from there, we can use this tool to build a command to erase and then reinstall the operating system on the Mac. So it kind of works just like how an iOS device would. A full erase, reinstall with one fell swoop. So let's take a look at that tool. As I have mentioned, it can be found in the installer application, and it will be underneath contents and resources. We have that Start OS install tool. If we put the path to that tool in terminal with the usage flag, we can see in which ways we can use that tool. So flags, erase install, that's what does the magic. That's what's fully erase and reinstalls the operating system. Agree to license does exactly what it says. It agrees to the license, but that way our users are not getting prompted to agree to the license. It will automatically agree to it. Force quit apps. Make sure that there are not any apps that stall the reinstall of the OS. So it will force quit any running apps. And then new volume name is optional, but if you want to name the Macintosh HD. So then if we put that all together in the command, it will look something like this. So from here, we can put it in a tool such as self-service. We can put it in a script, run it as a remote command, or even just run it locally in terminal to kick off the full wipe and reinstall. Then, as long as the device is in a pre-stage enrollment, when they go through the setup assistant, they will be enrolled, managed, and get all the software and settings from your MDM. And if you want to learn more about this workflow, there's a link at jamf.it/erase install that will bring you to a blog post written by the great Bill Smith, and it walks through the entire process. So I encourage you to check that out. All right, now that will wrap up the do's. So now that we know what we should be doing in regards to device deployment, let's talk about what we should avoid to best prevent any roadblocks or hiccups in our deployment. So number thing we should avoid, so our first don't, is in regards to the VPP token. Do you manage multiple MDMs? Or perhaps are you in the process of moving from one MDM to another? One thing we want to avoid is having one VPP token and more than one MDM. If we have a VPP token that is in more than one MDM, each MDM is going to be fighting over ownership of the token. So then when it comes to deploying your apps, you may not see them install at all. Or even better, they may ask you for an Apple ID. And in both situations, these will cause areas of confusion because you're sitting there thinking, hey, don't I have VPP to take care of this? Why am I seeing this? And while you do, if the same token is in two different MDMs, the other MDM may be the one that's currently claiming the ownership. So let's talk about the solution. Inside of Apple Business or Apple School Manager, you can create new locations. Each location can have one VPP token. So once you create your new location, you can download the VPP token for that location and then upload it to the respective MDM. So now you should see your apps deploying with no issue. Our second don't is do not rush. Deadlines can be a scary thing, and with that, they tend to cause us to rush to get devices out the door. It is really important with any deployment to plan ahead and not to rush. We do not want to miss any pieces of the puzzle or have an, I need to get software out the door, I will deal with that later mindset, because this will just create a poor end user experience and overall more work for you to do in the long run. So take your time and get it right the first time. Number three, don't. The third don't is don't control too much. As much as we want to lock down and secure our devices, we need to be conscious of how much we are taking away from our end users. We do not want to lock down our devices so much that it prevents the end users from doing their job or take away the experience of using their device. We also do not want our end users constantly creating help desk tickets because of this. Apple is all about giving the end users a great personal experience from device to device. So it is really important to find balance of your security and productivity, all while allowing end users to actually enjoy their Apple devices. It's all about that Apple experience. Number 4 thing that we should not be doing, do not assume users know the tech. Apple does a really good job making their devices intuitive and user-friendly. However, that does not mean we should assume everyone's going to know how to use their device when it is first placed into their hands. Some basic training, such as device orientation, or even something as simple as putting a self-guided get to know your device ebook and self-service, will help avoid any potential frustration or discouragement for new Apple users and create the best end user experience when it comes to using their device. A little bit of training will go a long way. And our 5th don't, do not skip testing. I can't stress this enough. Always, always, always test your deployments from start to finish. Make sure that your devices properly get enrolled, your software gets installed, there's no funky prompts or anything missing on the device. As much as you want to get devices out the door, always test first. This will make sure your end users have the best experience when they get their device. And then when it does come to testing, some of the best practices are to test among your different OS versions, so different operating system versions, and also different hardware, as one may differ from one another. Start with a small staging group, and then move to a bigger group to then prevent any potential larger downfalls. So hopefully you can see if there is any errors. You can see that first in the small group versus the large one. Test every update or change you make to your workflow, no matter how small the change was. And lastly, get someone else to test your workflows. Sometimes as we are building workflows and testing them, we tend to get stuck in the same mindset and in the process, or in the same flow as well. So we can get someone else to test our workflow, and then they may bring new ideas that we did not think of that could possibly make your current workflow even more efficient. Teamwork makes the dream work. All right, that wraps up the do's and don'ts. So in conclusion, do sign up for Apple Business and School Manager. Make sure you can utilize that automated device enrollment and volume purchasing. Do generate a software list so that users have the software they need to perform their job. Do take hardware into consideration. Are you having Intel processors, M1 chip, mix of both? Do come up with a deployment strategy. Are we going with a hands-on, hands-off approach? Make a plan. Do secure your devices. And also have a free deployment strategy. That way, if not all your devices are coming from out of the box, you can work with your existing devices. And then our don'ts. Do not have one BPP token in many MDMs. Make sure we create different locations in Apple Business or Apple School Manager to have a BPP token per MDM. Do not rush. Take your time, build out workflows. Do not control too much. Make sure that users can still enjoy their devices. Do not assume users know the tech. Some small training will go a long way. And then do not forget to test. Thank you all so much for joining today. I have confidence that you will knock your next deployment out of the park. I will take any questions.
Okay, we have quite a few questions that have come up during your talk. So I'll just start working down the list. Mike Oliva, Is there any reason to not just scope installing Rosetta to all our M1 Macs?
I would say no, and if I do find a reason, I could tell you outside, but there's no reason not to. It's not going to negatively affect those Macs, but I would try to determine between Rosetta and Intel, between which ones you install it on.
Okay. Next question is from, oops, there we go. Lauren from Slack. How would one download the Rosetta installer, the Rosetta 2 installer for offline MDS installation?
That is a great question. And I do not know the answer to that, but I would love to take your contact information and I can find out and get back to you.
Okay.
Or you can chat me in Slack at Molly Rigual.
Mike Oliva, with M1 Max, oh, where to go? With M1 Max, do you need to provide a user and password to use Start OS install?
That is also a great question. I don't believe so, but I also don't confidently have a yes or no, and I would also love to get back to you.
Okay. Let's just stump the band. Sean Doria, for zero-touch Mac deployment, are updates on how to prevent a user from skipping Wi-Fi during setup. We have been seeing this in about 2 to 3% of our deployments and is frustrating.
It is frustrating, and unfortunately, there is not a good answer. You can, on Macs at least, users can bypass Wi-Fi, and there's no way to force them to join Wi-Fi. On iOS, you can, but on macOS, you can't. So I would say no updates on that. Try to get them running or enrolled after.
Okay. This is from Gabe Stir in Slack. Can the Rosetta 2 package be added to the Start OS install package switch, unlike, say, security updates, which fail spectacularly?
Okay, sorry, I'm just rereading the question to understand it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm also going to take that. I don't believe so, but I can find out more. Y'all give me plenty to research and answers that I would love to give.
Sorry to interrupt here. Molly, how did you want people to contact you?
You can great question. You can contact me. I will put in the chat my email, or if easier, Molly Rigual at the Mac Admin Slack works as well. So I'll have both of that available.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I didn't answer your question, feel free to contact me and give me your contact information, because I would be so happy to find out the answers. Always can be learning.
Okay, and Gage Boshemin, the blog post you mentioned discusses how to feed the password for the reinstall OS process. Okay.
Cool. So that will answer that previous question. So thank you, Gage. So yes, that blog post, jamf.it / and I want to say it's Start OS or / erase install. jamf.it / erase install. And I'll put that in the chat as well.
Okay. And I don't see any other questions unless somebody else has something that I missed. Did I miss anything, James?
No, I think we got all of them.
Okay. That was a great presentation that answered quite a few questions I had. So for me, that was good.
Happy to hear. Thank you so much for letting me present.
Thank you. Okay.